Hello, I'm Kathy Wilson. I'm the Fine Arts teacher for the Utah Virtual Academy, and this is a demonstration of how to do the still life painting in Unit 2. For this still life, I've chosen a peach, a pear from our tree, and it seemed to need something else, so I got one of my husband's aftershave bottles from the bathroom. You'll also need a container of water, brushes that you got in your package, you'll need the paints that you got from K-12. Be sure that you have a few paper towels at hand. You always need that when you paint. Get a pencil, a good eraser, and I set this up on a piece of construction paper, which is just a cheap little piece of construction paper that I got from the store to make the colors look better. You will start out by placing colors on just a paper plate. I brought one here. I put both colors from the package here, the two yellows, one is a cool yellow, one is a warm yellow. I've also placed some oranges, reds, and blues, and burnt sienna from the paint boxes that you have. Notice some of them had kind of a lot of water as we begin. That's pretty typical for acrylic paints. Now I'm going to draw the still life on my board. And here I'm going to draw the peach. I'm going to draw it bigger than it is in real life. Behind the peach we have the aftershave bottle, but it looks like an art bottle here. We will pretend that it is an art bottle. The peach comes along this way and down. So I drew the basic shape of the pear. I'll get the other inside shapes later, and of the peach and the pear. The bottle is behind it, but the paper kind of shows through it. One thing that works really well here is that I have a nice overlap. That's why I included the bottle, an overlap of the shapes. And here is the paper here. Even though it's just construction paper, don't you think it looks just nice to have a little background of color there? The first thing I want to do, as you'll see in the lesson, is that you need to do what we call an underpainting. And with acrylics and watercolors, we usually do an underpainting of the yellows that are in the picture, and then afterward we paint the colors on top of it. In our watercolor kit we have a cool yellow and a warm yellow, and I'm looking at the peach, and it seems that the peach is mostly a warm yellow. Do you notice how I am mixing water into it so that it's not just so thick? Kind of loose, you can see, keep it wet, keep it loose on the peach. I've gone over the edge a little bit, it doesn't matter at all. And I think the same, do you notice that the pear is sort of a cooler color, so I'm going to do an underpainting of the cooler yellow right here. I'm guessing that this bottle, especially behind it, has some yellow in it too. You can see that the reflection right here has a little yellow, and I'll put that right in there. The hardest part and the most fun part of painting a still life or anything is matching colors. The rule I like to say to students is never paint with the paint right out of the tube, but always mix. I'm looking at my peach here. Always wet your brush. And I'm taking a little bit of my orange, mixing it with the warm yellow. And when I put it here, it's pretty close to the color. I think I like it. So I'm going to go ahead and place some of that peachy color right there where the peach is light. Add a little bit more of this, and it seems to me as though to darken it, the opposite of orange is blue, so I'm going to take a tiny bit of this blue and darken it so that I can continue on with the coloring down here. It's particularly a good choice because the blue paper here is reflecting, so we get shades of blue in the reflection. And I'll go ahead and paint the peach. So I have applied quite a few different greens to the pear. I did it, as you can see, with sort of how messy I've gotten on my palette. You mix white with various colors to get them. This sap green is a warmer green, which I think is and less blue, which I think is good for this pear. I'm just mixed some up with white now for the highlight. There's a little highlight over here too. I'm going to add just a slight more white because the highlight right here is fairly light, and we just add it to show where the light is showing. Basically, you just kind of follow the colors on the item. The green of the shaving bottle is tempered differently by the blue and the brown behind it, and even the white from where I'm sitting. But I'm trying to find that green. I started out with this phthalo green, and it's a little bit too blue, so I'm going to add just a little white and some of the sap green, and that actually looks pretty close. I think I'll just do the whole thing in that color and then go back over it with some washes to capture the backgrounds. But I'm going to try to find the blue of this paper, and I can't tell from it on my brush, so I'm going to put it here and say, you know, if I dilute this blue just as it is with some water, I believe it will be real close. You'll notice that there are some pretty light, bright highlights on this bottle, and that's what they call dessert in art, where you get to paint in the highlights. So I took one of our little brushes, I know that you got one with your kit, and I'm taking just pure white on the brush and smooth it so it's nice and neat. And I'm going to just paint in. The top is somewhat white with a little blue in it, so I'll just paint in the top. You could spend days placing these highlights, and it is the most fun thing to really. There are painters that just do bottles and other liquidy things, and they are mostly just done with wonderful highlights. Now I'm ready to paint in the background. You've noticed I put a little if you use any black, do it with great restraint. Just a few little black lines to show where we're at. Now I've got to figure out what this background is, and I've taken some of my burnt sienna, and it was too warm, it was too red. So when we want to temper red, if you want to look down at your color chart, your color wheel, you always add the opposite on the color wheel, which is green. I'm trying that. That's actually pretty close. Maybe a little bit of yellow to it. Make sure you use plenty of water. You could ask, well, gosh, you know, Mrs. Wilson, this doesn't really look real the way that the actual thing looks. It's not real looking. And I say, well, you know, if you wanted to look real, why not just take a photograph of it? The idea of painting is to have an experience with the materials and to have fun with it, to see what you can get by painting the materials yourself. Still life is, as we said, any materials that you can place onto a surface. You can do, so you're not going to paint something that shows up outside, and you're not going to paint a portrait. You're painting items that you can place on a table, so to speak. Work on more contrast and highlights in the bottle. There are some people that specialize in it, making it look like it's almost transparent. But if your painting turns out to look something like this, I think you would feel very happy to do it. I've been working on a still life of a couple of pears from my garden. I'm working in oils here, and on a piece of masonite board. You can see the background. I've prepared the masonite board with acrylic, but I'm painting in oils. I will go back, I've placed some of the highlights. I will go back and look at the fruit and place some more of the details in there. But you can see just by placing darks, mediums, and lights, when you look at it, when you look at it, it starts to look 3D. It starts to have a 3D look just by the way that you place the values. This is the end of our demonstration of the Unit 2 Still Life painting. Be sure to contact me by K-mail if you have any questions. This is the end of our demonstration of the Unit 2 still life painting. Be sure to contact me by K-mail if you have any questions.